And thanks for joining us here on PM Express. And tonight, fixing COCOBOD. It's a very important conversation that we must have, considering its contribution to our GDP and our economy generally. Unpacking the IMF prescription. Why has it become necessary? It has become necessary because last week the finance minister gave an interview to us and he spelled out a new strategy that they're going to be adopting to ensure fiscal discipline at COCOBOD, a place that holds in its palm the lives and livelihoods of thousands of cocoa farmers across the country. And just put it bluntly, this very economy relies heavily on a handsome performance of the cocoa sector. The finance minister told us that going forward, we are going to be seeing both himself personally and the central bank governor sit on the COCOBOD board, right? And that got a few people scratching their heads. And I'll tell you why pretty shortly. But this is how the finance minister plans to run the affairs of COCOBOD. Like, he himself wants to take a seat on the board. He's not going to go there alone. He is going to go there with the central bank governor. And then he also says they're not only going to do this, they're also going to set up a desk at the finance ministry. And the desk will bring fiscal supervision, but also ensure fiscal discipline at COCOBOD. And that in there implies that COCOBOD has been indisciplined over the years. And I will show you the hard facts that appear to support the point that the finance minister has been saying. But the key question to ask is, the finance minister should have known this by now. So why are they taking this step now? But the more important question to ask is, what difference really will this make to the fortunes of COCOBOD? Will it change something really fundamental about the way they run affairs there? So that's the basis for the conversation. It's really opened up a very interesting conversation about COCOBOD itself and what they've been doing with the farmers, the resources that they get, and running the affairs of that particular entity. So if you look really at this conversation, it really boils down to one thing: the IMF. We're only having this conversation now because the IMF is wielding a cane over us. They are being the headmasters and the proper governors of our economy. And they are asking us to do a few things. And that's why we're having this conversation. That is why, to be very honest, you're hearing the finance minister say he wanted to take a seat on the board. If the IMF wasn't in town, he wouldn't be saying this. So what is it that we told the IMF? For which reason we have been forced to do what the finance minister is proposing? The first thing we told the IMF is that we'll publish a turnaround strategy. And that turnaround strategy, according to the finance ministry, will be approved by cabinet. And they gave a deadline for this by the end of June 2023. The big question tonight is, I don't know if this has happened because the deadline of June 2023 has long passed. I don't know yet. There have been several cabinet meetings since June, and that's a key outstanding. And we try to get the finance ministry into the conversation so we can get some clarity about this very important sector of our economy. We don't have the clarity, but that is what we told the IMF. What else did we tell the IMF? We also told the IMF that we will include an immediate announcement of a joint ministerial supervision of COCOBOD by the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Agri. That, for me, is what the finance minister is now articulating as something that they will do, which is, in essence, they're going to have a joint supervision, but it's going to include the Agri Ministry and the finance minister. But he has now narrowed this down to the point of, personally, I'll be there. But can he really be there when the board needs him? We've heard from the Deputy Chief of Staff of COCOBOD who say, well, we'll need him there. But often, they don't really have time to be on the board and be exercising that sort of supervision that is required. But that's at least what we promised the IMF, for which reason we got an IMF deal. So now we will have to enforce it. Also, we told the IMF, and this, by the way, if you're a cocoa farmer tonight and you are listening to this, you need to pay attention. The other thing we told the IMF is, in essence, that we'll stop the cocoa loans. We'll stop the cocoa roads. Those concession arrangements that we've done, right, we'll stop it. This phase out this quasi-fiscal spending of the board. And that will affect, as you see here, the roads, discontinuation of the fertilizer subsidy, and most of you are beginning to feel this already, that fertilizer subsidy that you used to enjoy under this IMF program is going to go, because we made that promise to the IMF. So these are the key things that we promised to the IMF. So don't be surprised. You're hearing the finance minister say, I'm going to take a seat there. But here is where it gets interesting. Because the solution that the finance minister is proposing is a solution that already exists and hasn't really led to changing or improving the fortunes of COCOBOD. So let's go to the board, because he narrows down to changing the architecture of the board by putting himself on the board himself, right? If you look at this is the board. This is the board of COCOBOD. I'm going to go through that for you. It has a representative of workers of COCOBOD. That's already there. It also has two representatives of the Cocoa, Coffee, Share Farmers Association already on the board. 2 representatives already on the board. And then he also has ministerial responsibility, we know, is in the hands of the Minister for Food and Agriculture. But this 4th one is the point that both the deputy chief executive of COCOBOD and other critics of this new approach have highlighted, which is that as we speak currently, as composed, the board of COCOBOD already have a finance minister and the governor of the central bank on it. That is the reality of the board's composition as we speak right now. And I say a finance minister because as of August 2021, in fact, thereabout when the new board was inaugurated, at that time, it was the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry. And in this case, it was Boateng, right? Who was the ministerial representative from the Finance Ministry on the board of COCOBOD. And he was part of the names read out as those who are going to be constituting that board. So already, the Finance Ministry has a high-level representation, either the minister himself or, in that case, the Minister of State. And I assume, if we're going by that same arrangement, you currently still have a Minister of State at the Finance Ministry. And my assumption is, if you look at the 2021 example, when that board was inaugurated, this current Minister of State at the Finance Ministry should be on the board. So what really was the Finance Minister talking about when he says this is going to happen? And we're going to see that now as part of the board, because he already has representation there. If you have representation already, what difference will your own being, your own person, your own, taking a seat yourself there on the board, what difference would that make? And then he says, the governor of the central bank. But the governor of the central bank was part of the board members who were inaugurated, to be very precise, on 11th August 2021. Dr. Ernest Addison was on the board already at the time when it was read out by the Agric Minister then, Kojo Usefrie. So what is it that the Finance Minister is talking about when he says that he himself and the central bank governor will now sit on the board, because they're already there? And Mr. Addison was inaugurated by the Agric Minister back then. So you see, that's where the issues have come up as far as this is concerned. And then there's also a desk, right? That then was just fiscal discipline. But what really is the big picture? The big picture is that COCOBOD isn't the only entity that the IMF has highlighted as having a problem. COCOBOD was not the only one. We had others. But COCOBOD is so important to us because, as you know, it's one of the big 3 earners for this particular country. And then you go to ECG. We know ECG has gone through the same process. They've been chasing everybody to try and get as much as possible from those who aren't paying because of the IMF program. And they made a good start. And getting to restructure his debt and loans that he had accrued over time with the IPP. So that's another one. And then we also have the VRA, which, of course, now is having to dole out a lot of money, 9 million cedis at the last count today, to flood victims in the Volta region. So again, you're already struggling. You have the Ghana Water Company. You also have the TOR, which is another interesting conversation, a whole different subject for a whole show here on PM Express. We have the GMPC, and we have the Ghana National Gas Company, and of course we have BOSS. All of them, the IMF had identified as being exposed to substantial fiscal risk. But we are focusing for tonight on COCOBOD. So let's break the issues down a bit more, right? And this is the IMF own diagnosis of the COCOBOD problem. And that's what we are talking about tonight. Fixing COCOBOD. IMF says to fix COCOBOD, a few things will have to be dealt with. And they said COCOBOD has accumulated annual losses for many, many years because of high rollover cost of outstanding cocoa bills. And remember that we had this unprecedented scenario where COCOBOD was unable to pay its maturing coupons and also the securities to those who have actually loaned them money. And the interesting thing about that is that the people were actually paid their maturing coupons, it hit their accounts, and it was reversed, which is very, very unusual. And when we dug deeper, we learned that the Bank of Ghana at that time just refused to cover for COCOBOD. The COCOBOD has failed over the years to raise enough money to pay its own debt when it's due. So Bank of Ghana has been doing it for them, covering for them. When it came to this time, COCOBOD, Bank of Ghana says, we're not going to do that anymore. So although the monies had automatically gone into people's accounts, the monies had to be reversed. Those matured coupons that had been paid rightfully to people who deserve it because they've invested, they had to be reversed. And then they had to do another reversal to put the monies in a few days down the line. That told us that COCOBOD was in deep financial crisis. And the IMF rightly mentioned that that's one of the issues. And then you also have a high purchase price to cocoa products compared to the operational cost. And that is an important point. It goes to the farmers. And this is where the farmers make their money, right? The high purchasing price. They make their money. But IMF says it's an issue. Farmers are already complaining that they don't get enough, right? But IMF says, well, it's an issue. So what would that mean for farmers? We'll talk about that pretty shortly. And then the big one, this expenditure that COCOBOD has the appetite to do, talking about fertilizer subsidy, rural roads, but also, as the minority had pointed out, some expenditure that is administrative, that also costs the taxpayer quite a bit, which is not part of their core responsibilities. Many of the farmers who say they need this, they need the fertilizer provision. Many in the rural communities who need the roads will tell you that rural roads is important, but the IMF says that is clearly an issue that must be dealt with. So let's track the performance then of COCOBOD. What really are the numbers? And this is what the numbers, these are the few numbers to focus on in telling the story properly. And this, by the way, is COCOBOD's performance. And if you look at the losses that have been accruing over the years, 2012 those are lost, right? You come to 2013, again, 1.2 billion loss. You come to 2014, you have 326 million lost there. 2015, this is not a loss. This is they made a profit there. So that's a good one. I want to isolate that, for us to pay attention to. And I isolate it because it is possible. It is possible for COCOBOD to do something great and to make profits, right? And now, part of the IMF deal is to instruct COCOBOD to be run as a profit-making entity. That's part of the IMF deal, right? So we'll see how that pans out. But you come to 2016, we made a loss again, and again in 2017, and again in 2018, and again in 2019, and again in 2020. But then here's the kicker. You come to 2021, it is clearly an outlier because you're talking about $2.4 billion dollars or CDs worth of loss there. 2.4 billion. And it's nothing compared to any of the losses that we've talked about so far. So something really outstanding had happened here, which of course has alarmed the IMF and had led to these very drastic measures that the IMF is putting in. And then you look at the cocoa loans that have come in also, and you begin to see the loans that keep piling up and keep climbing and climbing and climbing. The COCOBOD clearly is overburdened with these significant loans that we see there in billions, by the way, that it keeps carrying on. And as we know, the syndication loan, the deputy chief executive says they will confound almost everybody because there are many people who say with this kind of balance sheet, they will be struggling to raise their cocoa syndication loan. He says they will do so. We'll see how they do it. And then, what does this mean for the farmer? And for me, this is the most important part of the conversation tonight. All what I've said, with the IMF coming into play, means fertilizer provision will be affected. It also means rural roads development will be affected. It also means that mass spraying of cocoa farms will also be affected. And then providing high yield seedling for farmers will also be affected. And it's instructive to note that the deputy chief executive told me on radio that one of the reasons why Of course, they struggle because it's not being run as a profit-making entity. It's run to focus on the farmer. So they put a lot of money into the farmers, right? But the instruction now is run it as a profit-making entity. If you run it as a profit-making entity, you won't give the subsidies anymore. The farmers, in essence, will be left to fend for themselves. But what is the impact of this? We need to save COCOBOD. Question is, at what cost? And then we also know rehabilitation of cocoa roads is something that will be affected. Let's talk about this. Fixing COCOBOD. My guests are joining me. Cocoa farmers are joining me. We're going to go to Parliament for a conversation. We'll speak to an economist to delve deeper into this. We had COCOBOD to join us, but of course they're unable. They reached out to us very late to say they can't come on the show now for many, many reasons. That's fine. But we'll still have the conversation nonetheless here on PM Express. Stay with me. PM Express is always brought to you by Centex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alumo Bites, experience greatness in every moment. Ghana AIDS Commission also joining us tonight for a conversation. Dr. Patrick Isumin is a guest joining us for a conversation on this very important matter, the development economist at the University of Ghana Business School. We also have Dr. Godfred Siedu Gisao. He's a deputy ranking on the Agri Committee of Parliament and MP for Wa East constituency. We also have Nana Aboidi Boateng Bonsu. He's the president of the Concerned Cocoa Farmers Association. And I want to start with him, Mr. Bonsu, with the cocoa farmers. Tell me, since this IMF program started, and I just detailed the agreements and the promises we made to the IMF, give us a sense of the life of a cocoa farmer under this current regime with the IMF, but also under this current economic conditions.
Yeah, good evening, and good evening once again to your viewers. There was a call that interrupts, so at the end of the day, I did not get what you said very well. So if you can,
I just wanted to start by first understanding the circumstances under which cocoa farmers are currently operating under the IMF program. What is it like compared to what you're used to? What has changed? What is new now?
Thank you very much. And then we, the cocoa farmers, have nothing to do with the IMF, and then we don't know anything about the IMF. What we know is COCOBOD, which is the head of we the farmers, which we attend to, or maybe they also attend to us, and then we have business with them. With IMF, we have nothing to do with them. So when you ask me this question, I don't know how to put it, but at the end of the day, the cocoa farmer that is in the village, as even where I am now, I have to even move all the way just to come and get to somebody's corridor for me to have a light. Network is very bad. I have to travel, let's say, 3 or 4 miles to get to the place to just get light and the network just to speak to you. We, the farmers, have nothing to do with the IMF, and the current situation with the IMF here and the condition don't bother us. At the end of the day, it bothers the government because.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm driving at is in the last year, for example, or two, have you noticed? We just went through it. Have you noticed the subsidy, for example, that you get, the spraying that you get, those arranged programs that government gives you? I mean, through COCOBOD to help you do your work and to farm cocoa. Have you noticed any changes in that?
It's a very big change. There's nothing that is happening. When you talk about a mass spraying and you talk about things that have been given to the farmers, there's nothing of that sort. We are on the ground 24/7, and as I'm speaking to you, a lot of farmers have even threatened to get rid of their cocoa and then get to a different thing altogether because, one, the thing that they are supposed to get, they are not getting it. And then COCOBOD have put wax in their ears not to listen to the farmers. And there was nothing on the ground. Mass spraying, fertilizer, whatever at all that you call it, there's nothing of that sort. We are not having it. And then farmers are really.
Okay, he's in his farm, so you can expect that the network may become an issue, and we may have a challenge with the Zoom. But I'm happy that he joins us. He joins us from the farm. Yeah, you were giving us a story. You say the mass spraying you don't have. The subsidies are also an issue.
Exactly. What is happening is we are having nothing. there was no any dialogue between the farmer and COCOBOD. COCOBOD, anything at all that comes to COCOBOD, they are mind that they think that it will benefit them, that is what they put it on the table. But there was nothing like an engagement, like let's sit down with the farmers. They are the real people on the ground. They are the people doing the job. Let's sit down with them and see what they want. But we live in a country that when somebody wakes up early morning and whatever that comes into his mind, he just implements it for us to follow, which is very bad. So COCOBOD are not doing better for with the cocoa farmers, and then there's nothing that has been happening within the cocoa industry. A lot of young people have now they've regretted for venturing into such a venture. Others are also cutting down their cocoa trees, doing something else that is planting rubber, selling their cocoa farms for guarantee and the rest. So this is really what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, I want to bring in Dr. Patrick Asumin. Doc, so clearly under the IMF program, a lot has changed in the affairs of COCOBOD. But we've heard the minister articulate what he believes to be the solution. One, of course, sitting on the board. Two, he talks about setting up the desk. And from everything else that I went through with the IMF program, clearly it's part of what they had agreed with the IMF. So this is going to happen with the IMF's blessing. But the key question is, does the proposed solutions actually fix COCOBOD?
Good evening, and good evening to viewers. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think it's great that you pointed out that, especially the one the minister spoke about being on the board. It's clear that it appears that maybe the minister is trying to maybe push the COCOBOD under the bus because the problem has come. Because obviously, they've been part of the board all along, and they've been part of they would have been aware of what is happening. I think that what is being proposed, both from our government side and then what has been put in the IMF program, doesn't really solve the long-term problem with COCOBOD. And what I see as a longer-term problem. So we do speak about the operational costs and the challenges that are there, but I think for me, the main problem has been a complete lack of vision about where we want to take our the long-term strategy for cocoa, and then all that has to do with that. Cocoa has been a mainstay of the Ghanaian economy for a long time, and to see that we have to go through this annual ritual of doing syndicated loan, and to the extent that even though the price that we receive on the world market is almost twice the price that we pay to the cocoa farmers. And yet we've not been able to do something substantial to the extent that we've accumulated it. It's just unacceptable. And for me, it just speaks about lack of clear strategy. At the outset, we should have had a plan where at some point COCOBOD will be self-financing and we wouldn't need to do this syndicated loan at all. If we had that as a plan, because you see, every time we go and do this syndicated loan and we are paying interest, it means that part of the value, that's the first part. The other part is in the cocoa. It used to be that the PBC, the produced by companies, used to be the dominant force. Now you see that chain is dominated by large multinationals. Now, there are some who are doing some processing, that is good, but there are a lot of them who simply substantial millions from that, way more than the cocoa farmer is receiving. All of these are value that should be coming to either COCOBOD or to the cocoa farmer, or surpluses that we should be generating and investing in the long-term sustainability of the economy. So that lack of vision to say this is the place we want the cocoa sector to be in 10 years, in 5 years, and wean ourselves off dependence on foreign financing, and then all these, and then also the management issues there are where the long-term problems lie. Not having a clear vision. Now, if you look at what we have agreed to do in the IMF program, is even going to cause us more problems. Because if you travel in rural Ghana, you realize that the cocoa roads, and here I'm not even talking about the financing arrangement. If you look at the important role that the cocoa roads play, because without them, the cost of sending the cocoa beans to the port for export would be problematic. So, and it's not just the cocoa sector that itself. Mind you, there are so many places that are cut off. And in the absence of the cocoa roads, there will be a lot of problems, even sending some key other produce to reach the main market centers. So when you decide that you're going to cut off the cocoa road, well, if there are issues with the financing arrangement and there are problems that have to be solved, we should solve those problems. Then to top it off, to say we are going to cut back on the fertilizer support and the spraying and other support it just completely blows my mind.
But it's also a reflection of how deep the COCOBOD problem goes, and that these are very radical propositions. But to think that the IMF agrees that and with the government that this is the way to go, what does it say itself about the effectiveness of the program when it comes to dealing with the cocoa sector? Because the IMF should know better, right? I mean, you expect that they'll know better, but you say their solutions, proposed solutions, will not solve the problem. It will actually make it worse. How so? Because you have to try and deal with the black hole that has generated over the years. How do you do that if you're not cutting costs?
See, the IMF looks purely at the financing side. They will look at government books and say, oh, they see that COCOBOD is leaking so much financing, is leaking so much public funds, and is beginning to depend so much on the budget. And then now we do these cocoa bills and loans that we are not able to pay. And they will say, okay, let's cut all of those. It doesn't see the long-term strategic importance of COCOBOD providing this kind of support by way of subsidized inputs, the spraying. It doesn't really go beyond, whatever financing issues are, and then look at the strategic long-term importance. And then you simply look at those short-term financing aspects and say, okay, let's cut this off. And I think that's where it's very problematic.
Yeah, but Doc, you see IMF's point, right? What you just articulated is what we've been doing for years, spraying, subsidies, etc. And yet, the graph that I showed earlier showed that we're doing that, and we've been recording losses year after year after year. The historic loss of 2021 of 2.4 billion tells a loud story. Something definitely must change to get COCOBOD back to efficient financial ways. And IMF reckons what must change is what they're actually doing now. Cut the subsidies, cut the spraying, cut the cocoa rows, etc. to fix this particular problem.
Well, this is where the disagreement is, because you may cut the subsidies, you may cut the spraying, then you forget about, over the long term, what those things do to the volume of the cocoa that we produce. I do recall a long time ago when the cocoa spraying was introduced for the first time. I think President Kufuor was in government at that time. There was a huge jump in the production for the next so many seasons. So we do know that those subsidies make a difference. If the IMF has said, let's focus on the operational cost and trying to address them, and let's look at this financing arrangement about, the cocoa bills and how we purchase the cocoa and make efficient use. Cocoa generates a huge surplus for the economy. We are only here because we don't manage those surplus properly. And, part of the reason is that the COCOBOD has become a little bit of a political football. So we do see politicians controlling a lot of things that happen there. And that is where the issue lies. The issue is not the meager support we give to the farmers by way of the subsidy and the spraying and the other subsidized inputs. That is not the cause of COCOBOD's problem. So yes, when in terms of what to cut to make immediate impact, you see that once you cut those things, it will make immediate impact for you. But we have to think about the medium term, what that means for how much cocoa we'll be producing in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Let me bring in the cocoa farmer with us into the conversation. And I want to switch the conversation slightly. First, give me your thoughts on this whole decision by the finance minister to say, I want to take a position on the board. I want to be there myself with the BOG, although we've shown that they've already have representation on the board and they're going to set up a monitoring desk. As a cocoa farmer, what's your reaction to that? Does that improve your fortunes at all?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think they are just playing with our intelligence. That is one. And then at the end of the day, they are just joking with the cocoa farmers. What is the finance minister coming to do? At the end of the day, we gave him the whole country just to take care of it. And what happened? So COCOBOD itself is a collapsed institution. It has collapsed already. We know it and we foresee it. We said it several times, but they never listen. So with this situation, we don't need Ken Ofori-Atta and his people and other things for them to do what? They have nothing to do. They have nothing to do. If they have something better to do, like by now, Ghana's economy has shoot up. Like by now, you will not be calling me by this time. Do you get it? But what happened? They have nothing to offer. Cocoa farmers are capable of doing their own things. If we are able to manage our cocoa up to now, that we are feeding the country and the country don't even recognize we as a cocoa farmers. What we are saying is they should forget about us. They should forget about Ken Ofori-Atta and his people. And then if they know that COCOBOD is collapsed, we should know so that at the end of the day, as a cocoa farmer, I can sell my cocoa directly to the buyer to make my money rather than relying on the government. The government have nothing better to offer for the farmers. As I'm speaking to you, a lot of people, millions of people want to cut down their cocoa tree, want to shift from cocoa to a different crop, all because they've seen that they have been enslaved for so many years. Enslaved for so many years. What is Ken Ofori-Atta coming to do? He was the finance minister, and what happened? And then they will come and tell us that they bought the board, and then they went to cabinet and whatever that they call it. We don't believe in that. What we are saying is the industry has collapsed. So they should allow we the cocoa farmers directly sell our cocoa produce to make our money. Because other countries are doing it. They sell their cocoa on their own. Why is it that what interest is government so much interested in that he cannot even allow we the farmers to sell our produce than for him to sell it for us? Then it means he's getting more. And that is why he's so interested. If there's nothing there, like Ken Ofori-Atta will not come. Move all the way from the finance side just to come to the cocoa sector. We don't need Ken Ofori-Atta, and even we don't even need the wine, edus, and other things. At the end of the day, they've caused the financial loss to the state, which they have to pay for. They have to pay for. Because at the end of the day, this government, there's no way that this government have to tell us a story that we are getting losses of cocoa. Because they came, they raised the number of seedlings from 6 million or so to almost.
That day is Nana Boateng Bonsu, who's the president of the Concerned Cocoa Farmers Association. We have lost him there. Yeah, I mean, and you make the point about you don't think that this solution that has been proposed will change much. But also, as part of this IMF program, is a directive to COCOBOD for it to run as a profit-making entity. That definitely is good news, is it not? I mean, they will be more efficient if they have to make profit. Or you think that will hurt the cocoa farmer?
What is IMF? We don't believe in IMF. Who is IMF? If the government will go for IMF, fine. They have to do on their own thing, but then they don't have to use us for IMF for things that they've not even sat down with us to discuss. We are farmers in this country. All the decisions that the government.
Well, his connection isn't great. Let me bring in Dr.
And
Patrick.
there's no way that we will believe in them.
Stay with me. Stay with me. We're just having a challenge with that connection there. I want to bring in Dr. Patrick Swimming on that point about COCOBOD running as a profit-making entity. You say the sitting on the board and closer supervision is not the solution. But if they are to run as profit-making entity, does that fix the problem?
I don't see I mean, what? So that, again, that will help fix a fiscal problem, because once they are making losses, it becomes a drain on public finances. Therefore, whatever you're going to do to help them to cut off that particular drain, it will definitely improve. It will make the government books look better. But we have to ask, where around the world do we set up these produce marketing boards to be profit-making entities? And in this case, what specifically are they going to do to make the profit? If the profit is simply coming from denying the specific interventions that help boost cocoa production, then at what long-term benefit? If the profit is coming from running efficiently so that operation costs are down, and therefore, the drain that it become on the public finances, if we manage to cut that part off, then of course. But then again, they will generate a surplus. What are we using the surplus for? Are we just going to generate profit so that we just send it to government coffers, or we are going to reinvest in the cocoa sector so that we strategically invest more in more processing of our cocoa and adding value? So I think we have a problem to solve. Simply saying we turn them into profit-making entity, I think it's just it's a nomenclature that doesn't really address the issue.
No, but that definitely brings efficiency, does it not?
Not necessarily. I think, look, we've seen some other government entities or some SOEs that run for profit, and the efficiency now, you're a profit-making entity, will not necessarily bring efficiency. There are specific measures we have to take. Examine their books. Look at where the main cost drivers are. Look at the problems and solve them. And then say, redirect them. It's not just about if COCOBOD is making profit at the expense of the farmers. If they end up saying they are going to drive a bigger wedge between the world market price and the producer price to farmers, and that is where the profit is coming from, then what have we achieved? So we will say cut down operational costs and all. We should, because COCOBOD doesn't just, they serve a strategic purpose. I think we should just disabuse our mind that it's just a marketing entity. No, and I think that is where our government should have understood and made the point to the IMF. Yes, we do acknowledge that there are problems, and let's try and fix those specific problems and not say, we simply turn it to a profit-making entity.
Mr. Obadia, that point about profit, you were talking about it when your line went. You don't want your COCOBOD to be run as a profit-making entity?
No, why should we do that? If COCOBOD have something, they have somebody to thank. They have to thank the former agriculture minister. He's the only person that have saved the industry as of now. If it's not Dr. Friakoto, like as I'm speaking to you, we don't even have a single cocoa tree in this country. And at the same time, most of the farmers have moved from the cocoa sector to a different place. So COCOBOD moving
what did he do differently?
He saved the situation. COCOBOD were just dormant. COCOBOD were not listening to the farmers. But the report that got to Dr. Friakoto, quickly he reacted to it. A lot of people, when he went to Western North, thousands of millions of cocoa farmers, their trees were just cut off for replacement. And where they have to give them money for so many years or for so many months, the money was not given to them. So most of them lose hope for not continuing again. We sent a report to COCOBOD, they did not mind us. But the moment the report got to Dr. Friakoto, checks and other things were released for the farmers. So at the end of the day, we, the cocoa farmers, see the entity or see the sector, that is the COCOBOD, that they are not some people or they are not a body that can help. For so many years, they've done nothing for us. They've done nothing. I mean, they are not more interested in the cocoa trees that we are having. There are a lot of has got into them. There are a lot of report that has got into their table. Nothing has been done about it. Ask one Eden what he has done so far. They've done nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Nana Boateng, Bonsu, I assume that you have a cocoa plantation for yourself?
Exactly, I am.
Okay. Do you make profits from that?
I do make profit because I don't sell my cocoa to the government. I add value to it.
So when you say add value, what exactly do you do with the cocoa?
I roast it and then sell it as roasted cocoa beans, which people like it, and it is good. It is good for your heart, and it is food that those that even have a diabetic people are eating. It is good. Cocoa is food on its own. Just that a lot of cocoa farmers don't know how to add value to their cocoa tree, their cocoa beans. That is why their focus is on the government. Government is not doing anything better for us. You are selling your cocoa bag very cheap. Look at the price that they give us recently, which you can even make 2,000 or 3,000 with your bag when you add value to it. And when you are serious enough, you can even get 5,000 per bag. So why should you cheap yourself so low in a way that you are dependent on somebody somewhere in Europe just to sell your things for them? You see, cocoa farmers, as I'm speaking to you now, we are no more interested of selling our cocoa directly to Europe and other things. We want to sell it on our own. Government have to give us that power to do that, because already
if you had,
industry has
this is just out of curiosity. Assuming tomorrow the policies changed and you can sell your cocoa yourself, who will you sell it to?
Oh, there are a lot of people that they are waiting to buy the cocoa. There are thousands and millions of people that they are waiting. If we don't even have a ban like that on us, that when you export your cocoa, you send your cocoa somewhere, you be arrested. They are in. A lot of people come. As I'm speaking to you, people from Jamaica and other places, they are ready to buy our cocoa. Just that they can't buy directly from the farmers. That is the problem. So what we are saying is the policy have to change, because already the cocoa industry has collapsed. The moment the man left, the place has collapsed, because the boy in Edu and his team and other people cannot hold it. They can't hold it. If you can even just imagine that recently the minister said he works hand in hand with an association which is not even connected with the farmers, which court has even dissolved it. That is the only association that he recognized. If a minister of state just makes such a pronouncement, then you have to know where we are heading towards to. Everything has collapsed. They can't hold it anymore. Because the only savior that we have was Dr. Friakoto. When he was there, things were moving smoothly. Things were going well for the farmers. Because most of the report, things that we are not getting, when we push him, we get it.
Well, I mean, keeping them honest, I mean, Dr. Friakoto was until very recently the agric minister, and as I've just been talking about the numbers, under his tenure, we saw consistent losses at COCOBOD. So, I mean, in fact, it was under his word that we had the 2.4 billion CD loss, unprecedented in the history of COCOBOD. And so that, just keeping them honest there. I want to bring in Dr. Patrick Asumin. Doc, he mentioned Dr. Friakoto, who is a former agric minister. And I need to ask you something about that. We're talking about solutions here. Does it also come down to changing the management structure, overhauling the management structure at COCOBOD? Would that solve the problem?
So we can change the management structure. There's a problem with how we manage SOEs, and that has to change. So, and you mentioned earlier during the introduction that it's not just COCOBOD that has been leaking funds, it's been leaking money.
Yeah.
So there's a general problem about how we deal with SOEs, where sometimes it appears that it becomes, some tools for political leaders to cultivate patronage. So I think there's that general problem. So even if you change the management structure, and then that aspect, we still allow politicians to retain control, then I'm not sure that necessarily solves the problem. Then you have to look at, again, what role do we want cocoa to play? And what role within that structure? So if you have a longer term development strategy, what is the long-term role for the cocoa sector? And how do we get there? So that vision has to be clearly communicated. At the moment, it's business as usual. Every year, we do syndicated loan. It helps stabilize the currency a little bit. We are happy. And, people, we are not really taking care to track exactly how the funds are being managed, especially at the cocoa level. Meanwhile, the cocoa is generating a lot of surpluses. So I think we need to have a longer term plan. That is a long-term vision. That is important. And say, in 10 years, we want cocoa to do this. Then we have to communicate how we want to get there. That plan should definitely involve doing more processing and moving away from the current financing model where we do syndicated loan, pay a lot of money as interest from the hard work of the cocoa farmers. I think it also explains why the cocoa farmers have been complaining that they now want to sell their cocoa directly, because they've seen that they work extremely hard. They hardly get half of the value of their produce. And then whatever surplus is generated, they don't really see exactly what is being done for their benefit. I think the issues about the subsidies and the spraying that will actually help the productivity of the cocoa trees is something that, at least indirectly they see they are benefiting. Now we've heard talk about establishing a pension for them. That is also great. But if, because we've gone to the IMF, we are going to take those ones out at a time where COCOBOD is making losses, because they are fulfilling their part of the bargain. They are producing their cocoa and they are selling on as the government policy demands. But the COCOBOD, the entity sitting in Accra, headquarters in Accra, with a lot of political appointees, if they are making decisions that are causing losses, now they feel disenchanted, and that is why they feel that they'll be better off, because they also know what the world market price is, and they feel that they are better off receiving a bigger share. I don't think that will serve the interest of the nation, because even in this current state, the cocoa, the surpluses that we generate from cocoa, it really helps support in a lot of ways. So I think going back to that is not really ideal. But you can also understand the frustration of the farmers. So I think we need to think about a model where we change from exactly what we are doing, because there's a lot of leakage. There's a lot of the value that we generate from cocoa that doesn't go to the farmers, doesn't go to other Ghanaians, and a lot of it may end up in the hands of government, but it's not being used for the long-term interest, for the long-term benefit of the average cocoa farmer.
Yeah, and Mr. Boateng, very finally to you. For you as a cocoa farmer, what do you want to see to address the concerns that you've articulated so eloquently on the show? If it's not about closer supervision of COCOBOD, if it's not about stopping the losses through cutting some of these expenditure items that COCOBOD undertakes, what for you is the solution? Hello, Nana.
Yeah, thank you very much. The only thing that we need is COCOBOD have to dissolve. They have to dissolve COCOBOD. That is one. And then two, we want our liberty to sell our cocoa by ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we've turned slaves, and then they are rather enjoying. COCOBOD are enjoying. Let us look at their payroll and the benefit that they are getting, and let us watch what we are also getting. Common welfare.
Oh, goodness me.
There's no school built well within our catchment area. We don't even have hospitals. We don't even our wives. Sometimes some of our wives got labor doing on the way to the hospital. Sometimes on the farm, all because there's not a proper healthcare system for us. We have nothing. The only thing that we have now is the cocoa tree, which the government also don't value it, because it has given some portion and concession for people just to come and destroy it. As I'm speaking to you, if you're a cocoa farmer, your life is in danger, because you'll be on your farm and somebody will just come that your land has been given for a concession, and then they'll just get in with guns, with police, just to come and cut down your cocoa trees. So what you are telling me, COCOBOD is no more. For now, we the cocoa farmers don't recognize that COCOBOD is there, because the things that we need from COCOBOD, they are not doing it. And at the end, with their losses that they've so far has happened, they have to pay for it. I think that they've caused financial loss to the state, which they need to pay for all the losses.
Because, yeah, and you clearly see the passion there from a cocoa farmer, obviously listening to all the discussions around the table and expressing his views there. Dr. Patrick Asumin, a development economist at UGBS, is the University of Ghana Business School. And you had Nana Obuadia, who has been speaking to us from his cocoa farm. We're working to see if we can get to talk to the chief executive himself so we can understand properly what the big picture is in resolving all the COCOBOD challenges that we illustrated to you using all the hard facts that is out there for everybody to see. Enjoy the rest of the evening.